So I'm going to be participating in the Readathin reading challenge for the month of May, and so I thought I'd share my TBR. I'm going to be focusing on this readathon basically for this entire week, but I'm also going to be trying to incorporate whatever books I don't get to this week throughout the rest of the month of May. We'll see how that goes, but I'm always happy to have some prompts to follow. So they do have a bingo board. They also just have like a little different graphics basically that you can put your books in. So I'm going to be using this little graphic that is on your screen to put my books into, and I'm going to kind of be using it as a mini bingo board. And basically, what I've told myself is that for every bingo I get off this board, I'll allow myself to buy a book. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know that how many I'm going to get, and that will only apply for this week. It will not apply for the month. So we'll see how I do with that, but let me go ahead and tell you what books are going to fit in each of these slots. So I'm just going to go in the order that they're here in the pile in my lap and on my TBR cart and just fill them in at random on the board. So for the first prompt I'm going to discuss, I picked a book that had a color in the title, and this was nice because I did incorporate all my carryovers from April into this TBR, and the book I chose for that prompt is The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. I am already in the midst of this book and may have already finished it by the time I post this video. I'll let you know if I have. Anyway, this is the book for a book with a color in the title. Okay, so I removed the books that were up here that aren't part of the TBR, and I'll just start stacking my pile there. Next, I needed to choose a book that is off my physical TBR, and I chose the Arabian Nights for that prompt. I have been working on this book since the month of March, I think, and should be finishing it this month. So, all the more reason to give myself an excuse to read it every single week. And yeah, so that's what this pick will be. You can see I'm about two-thirds of the way through, so that will just fit right there. The next prompt that I looked at was found family trope, and I don't really look at too much what my books are about before getting them. That's not true. But this is a trope that I really enjoy, but I don't tend to look for that often. And so I had a really hard time initially trying to figure out which of my books that might apply to, because I feel like you kind of need to know a decent amount of the story. Anyway, after thinking about it for a bit, I realized that would apply to the mysteries of Paris. There are a lot of mysteries going on in here, including families that have been separated and missing people in families. But I would say there is definitely at least two characters at this point who are in sort of a found family or family by choice type of situation. So I'm going with that. You also had a graphic novel pick, and I did go onto the website, which I will link the announcement videos and the website and all that below. They give a lengthy description of what they mean by each of these prompts, which was good because for graphic novel, I was like, I don't own any graphic novels. But then I read that you could do graphic novels, web comics, comics, or manga. And I own one manga. And so I am going to use that. And that is the Tale of Genji. And this is the manga edition, as you can see. Bet you didn't know there was a manga edition of it. So, unless you've watched my channel, because I think I've mentioned it before. So I will be reading this. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get to this book because I've been waiting for an excuse to read it, and I keep forgetting that I own it, and then it comes up again occasionally, and yeah. So, win-win. There's also a prompt to finish a series, and this was tricky for me because I'm not really at the end of a lot of series. I start series like nobody's business. But then when I looked at the description and Donna's video, she did say it could also be a book that's just going to help you move towards finishing a series. So it's basically anything other than starting a series. And I was like, oh, I can do that. So I will be reading the second book in the Cairo trilogy, and that will be Palace of Desire. I have a bind up of all three books. I read the first book, which is Palace Walk last summer, I believe, summer of 2023. So I'm looking forward to finally getting to the second book. I don't know if I'll get to it this week though, because each of these like books within here is like 300 or 400 pages long, which is not that long, but the print is kind of on the smaller side. And I remember the first book taking me a while, but there are audiobooks of it. So I may do like a little combo of it. And it's not that long, but it would definitely end up being my primary read for this week if I did it. So I don't know if it's going to happen this week, but I'll probably pick it up later this month. So for a forgotten book, which is just a book I forgot I owned, is Of Mice of Men. And it's not so much that I forget that I own this. It's just more that it's really down on a bottom shelf that's kind of hidden in darkness and it curves, and it's usually snugged up against the curve. So when I go and look, it's not the first book that I see on that shelf. In fact, I usually have to move a couple of books around because then it gets squeezed in between there because it's small. Anyway, Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck is on my list. It's a short book, so stands a pretty decent chance of getting read this week. For a social media pick, again, I went by what Donna said in her video, which was it could include using Storygraph, and so I did. And so the first book that I saw in Storygraph that I owned was The Matchmaker by I think it's Stella Gibbons? Yes, Stella Gibbons. And I just love this cover because chickens, right? It's all about the chickens. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to reading this book. It is supposed to be about a young woman named Alda who moves with her three daughters to Pine Cottage, which is a little village, right? Yeah. Yeah. And she goes there to start a life, but she finds that everybody else's love life is a hot mess. And so she decides it's her prerogative to fix it, thus the matchmaker. So it sounds like a cute little classic novel. I'm looking forward to reading this. It's not too long. Maybe I'll get to it. Sounds like a fun, lighthearted read. For a book with the LGBTQIA plus main character, as far as I can tell from Storygraph, that would be Tipping Velvet. And okay, it's editing Nicole here real quickly, and I'm just jumping in here to my own TBR to say that I had planned on doing a different book for this prompt, but I have changed my mind based on what I've been reading closer to the time that I'm actually going to be working on this next upcoming week. So I've been reading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and I realized that this book fits this prompt better. So I am going to use this book for the prompt that the book needs to be a book who has a LGBTQIA main character. That was just something I didn't know about the book before reading it. And so now that I know that, I'm like, why choose and add on a completely different book when I have a book I've already read? So yay, one already done off this card. A book under 300 pages was a good excuse to read William Styron's Nat Turner, 10 Black Writers Respond. I have had this on my shelf for a couple of months now, and I really want to know what their responses are. This is a collection of 10 essays. I've read the first essay, so this is a good week to get the other 9 essays done. I guess if I read at least one essay a day this week, I'll get through most of this book. So for the next book, I combined 2 prompts, which I did say you could do, and that would be a book from the library and a book that's in a different format from the one that you own, and actually would cover 3, which is to finish a series, but I'm not going to use it for that last one. But it's 3 Men on the Brummel, and that is the second book in this bind-up collection I have. I will listen to the audiobook of this that I will be borrowing from one of my library's audiobook apps. For a free space, I will be doing The Ambassadors by Henry James. This is the book that is ultimately, in some ways, along with probably this book, that I actually need to get read this week. Because these are the 2 books that will count for my May TBR prompt, which was, gosh, let me see if I can get it. It needed to be a book that was part of a readathon, as well as part of a series, and was one of the least shelved books on Storygraph. This book, The Ambassadors, is what Storygraph has told me is the book that I own that is the least shelved on Storygraph, and this book would cover the series. So if I read these 2 books, it would cover that one prompt for my May TBR. Yeah, and we'll see if I do it this week, but they're on my May TBR anyway. Clearly, I have the potential of getting a few bingos since I've filled up the board with potential and hopeful books. And I will probably circle on the screen for you the ones that are bingos that I think I'm most likely to get just based on other reading I'm doing this month. But I'm glad to have pulled these off my shelf to give myself some options in reading, and we'll see what happens. Stay tuned. So, yeah, I guess this is going to be a can I get a bingo in a week? So, that's it for today. Let me know if you have read any of these books, and let me know if you're participating in the Readathon reading challenge. I should probably look it up and see which one of those it is, because I'm sure it's a specific one. And that's it. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.